It was a story of tradition versus change, of struggle and transformation. Ip Man had been forced to let Bruce go, but in doing so, he had set him free to become something far greater than anyone could have imagined. The story of why Ip Man stopped teaching Bruce Lee is rooted in cultural traditions and societal norms of the time. Bruce Lee, a young and talented martial artist, began training under Ip Man in the Wing Chun style when he was a teenager in Hong Kong. He was passionate, quick to learn, and showed immense potential. However, during that time, traditional Chinese martial arts schools often had strict rules about whom they would teach. When some senior students at Ip Man's school discovered that Bruce Lee had mixed ancestry, his mother was of Eurasian descent. They protested. They believed that Wing Chun should only be taught to full-blooded Chinese students. Ip Man, who valued harmony among his students and was bound by the cultural customs of the time, faced a difficult choice. Although he personally did not share these prejudices, the pressure from other students and the traditional martial arts community forced him to distance himself from Bruce. Some accounts even suggest that Ip Man never directly taught Bruce, but instead allowed his senior students to train him. Despite this setback, Bruce Lee did not abandon his martial arts journey. He continued to refine his skills, blending Wing Chun with other influences, eventually creating his own philosophy of Jeet Kune Do. Later in life, Bruce sought to reconnect with Ip Man and even offered financial support to his old master, showing his deep respect and gratitude. Though their student-teacher relationship ended prematurely, Ip Man's influence remained a core part of Bruce Lee's martial arts foundation, shaping the legend he would become. The Untold Struggle: Why Ip Man Stopped Teaching Bruce Lee. It was the early 1950s in Hong Kong, a city teeming with life, opportunity, and the echoes of tradition. In a modest martial arts school, a young and fiery Bruce Lee trained under the legendary Wing Chun master, Ip Man. Bruce was different from most of Ip Man's students. His movements were sharp, his reflexes were quick, and his passion was unmatched. Even at a young age, he had the spark of a warrior. Ip Man saw potential in Bruce, recognizing his natural ability and eagerness to push beyond conventional limits. Unlike many students who simply followed the techniques without question, Bruce was curious, constantly experimenting, asking why a move worked and how it could be improved. This was both a gift and a challenge. While Ip Man admired Bruce's enthusiasm, the traditions of martial arts were deeply ingrained in the culture, and questioning the ways of old was not always welcomed. The clash of tradition and change. Bruce Lee's talent did not go unnoticed, but neither did his heritage. His mother, Grace Ho, came from the wealthy and influential Ho Tung family and had Eurasian ancestry. This was a point of controversy in a traditionalist society where martial arts were considered a cultural legacy meant to be passed down only to those of full Chinese blood. One day, whispers turned into protests. Senior students, many of whom were fiercely loyal to the traditions of Wing Chun, approached Ip Man with their concerns. They believed that Bruce, being of mixed descent, should not be allowed to learn the deeper secrets of Wing Chun. To them, martial arts were more than just physical techniques. They were a sacred inheritance, and sharing them with an outsider was unthinkable. Ip Man was placed in an agonizing position. He had no personal grudge against Bruce. In fact, he respected his determination. But the pressure from within his school was immense. The traditional martial arts community in Hong Kong operated under unwritten but rigid rules, and defying them could lead to internal conflict and loss of reputation. The silent farewell. Instead of outright expelling Bruce Lee, Ip Man made a decision that would change the course of martial arts history. He distanced himself, allowing his senior students to take over Bruce's training. Slowly, Bruce realized that he was no longer receiving direct guidance from the Grandmaster. It was a silent but clear message, one that must have deeply hurt the young martial artist. Bruce, never one to accept defeat, continued practicing Wing Chun on his own. But his mind was restless. He had tasted the rigidity of tradition and saw its limitations. If he could not learn everything from Ip Man, then he would seek knowledge elsewhere, beyond the confines of one style or one school of thought. A journey beyond boundaries. Bruce Lee eventually left Hong Kong for America, where he started teaching martial arts to people of all races and backgrounds, something that would have been unthinkable in the traditional martial arts world he came from. He took what he learned from Ip Man and refined it, merging it with other influ. Though their time together was cut short, the essence of Ip Man's teachings remained within Bruce Lee. In the end, what was once a painful separation became the catalyst for a revolution in martial arts, one that would inspire generations to come. The untold story. Why Ip Man stopped teaching. Bruce Lee. In the humid, bustling streets of 1950s, Hong Kong, where neon lights flickered over busy markets and trams rattled through narrow roads, a young boy named Bruce Lee trained under one of the most revered martial artists of his time, Grandmaster Ip Man. The training hall where Ip Man taught Wing Chun was modest, almost hidden. But inside its walls, students learned an art that had been passed down for generations. Among them was Bruce Lee, a teenage boy with boundless energy and an insatiable thirst for knowledge. Unlike many students who followed instructions without question, Bruce was different. He was intense, curious, and often challenged the rigid structures of traditional martial arts. His passion for fighting wasn't just about technique. It was about discovery, about pushing beyond what was expected. Ip Man saw something special in Bruce. The boy's movements were sharp, his reactions quick, and his understanding of Wing Chun advanced for his age. He had an instinct that couldn't be taught, a natural talent that set him apart. And yet, despite his potential, there was a shadow looming over his training, one that would soon force a wedge between student and master. The shadow of prejudice. Bruce Lee came from a well-off family. His father, Li Hoi Chuen, was a famous Cantonese opera singer, and his mother, Grace Ho, came from the prestigious Ho Tung family. But while his background gave him privilege, it also brought challenges. His mother's Eurasian heritage made him, in the eyes of traditionalists, not fully Chinese. In those days, many martial arts schools in Hong Kong were deeply rooted in cultural and racial traditions. It was an unspoken rule that Chinese martial arts, especially styles as revered as Wing Chun, should only be taught to those of full Chinese descent. It was not just about technique, but about preserving what they saw as a sacred legacy. At first, Bruce's mixed heritage didn't seem to be a problem. He trained alongside other students, proving himself again and again. But as he advanced in skill, some of Ip Man's senior students began to voice their concerns. They believed that someone who was not fully Chinese should not be allowed to learn the deeper, more refined techniques of Wing Chun. To them, martial arts were more than just self-defense. They were a national treasure, meant to be guarded. Whispers spread through the school. Conversations became debates, and soon, pressure was placed on Ip Man himself. Ip Man's dilemma. Ip Man was a man of principle. He was not driven by politics or prejudice. He valued skill, discipline, and dedication above all else. In his heart, he likely did not care about Bruce's ancestry. but he was also part of a traditional martial arts community, one bound by certain unspoken laws. The protests from senior students were not something he could ignore lightly. If he continued to teach Bruce personally, it could create division within his school. Students might leave, other masters might criticize him, and the reputation of his Wing Chun lineage could be questioned. It was a painful decision, but ultimately, Ip Man chose to step back. Instead of formally expelling Bruce, he allowed the training to continue, but without his direct involvement. He distanced himself, letting his senior students take over Bruce's instruction. To a young Bruce Lee, the message was clear. His journey with Ip Man was over, a fire that would not die. Bruce was deeply hurt by this silent rejection. He had idolized Ip Man, and to suddenly be cut off from his guidance was devastating. But rather than breaking his spirit, this experience ignited something new in him. He realized that tradition, while important, could also be a cage. If he could not learn everything from Ip Man, then he would find his own way. Bruce began experimenting, studying other styles, and thinking beyond the limits of Wing Chun. Eventually, he left Hong Kong and moved to America, where he began teaching martial arts himself. Unlike the traditions that had once pushed him away, Bruce believed that martial arts should be for everyone, regardless of race, background, or style. He merged his knowledge of Wing Chun with other techniques, refining his own philosophy. Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist. His approach was revolutionary. Instead of rigidly following one system, he believed in adaptability, in using what worked and discarding what didn't. This philosophy would later shake the martial arts world to its core. A reunion of respect. Years later, after Bruce had gained fame in America and started making a name for himself in Hollywood, he sought to reconnect with Ip Man. Despite the way